All right, Steve, I am super excited about today's dose of Dr. E and Dr. P. Guess what, folks? We are doing it on shots. And I don't know exactly why we came up with this topic, but, I'm prepared. I got, vodka, gin. I got some tea.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
We're talking about insulin shots. People on multiple daily injections. I know you got a one-track mind, but come on.
Oh. Totally. Yeah, this was just for fun, a funny bit. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce the topic, take it away, and we'll get started.
Yeah. Now, most of our programs are talking about all the modern technology, hybrid closed loop, insulin pumps, automatic insulin delivery systems. But today we're going to talk about the method that most people with diabetes who take insulin are on, called MDI, multiple daily injections. Can you slow down?
Sorry, I was just, cleaning up here. It's a great topic, super important for us to talk about. And you probably don't think about this much, but, like the injection technique, like how you actually do the injections, what kind of needles you're using is so important. And before Steve and I, sat down to talk about this topic, and we actually didn't hash it out very well because clearly there was a misalignment on what we were talking about. But anyways, I was kind of saying the evolution of when you're taught to do injections is this. You're initially taught that every time you need to use like an alcohol wipe. You need to use a fresh needle. You inject it. You hold it in the skin for 10 seconds. And then you carefully take off the needle or the syringe and put it in a, what?
Sorry, I was going to add rotate your shots.
You rotate your sites and you put it into, a sharps container, and probably over the weeks to months to certainly years, all that fades away. Alcohol wipes are, first to go. You're reusing your syringes. You're injecting through shirts. Maybe you're throwing your needles into a Tide container, or maybe you're just throwing them in the garbage. But we kind of just,
I hope not.
All of that goes away. So what of that?
Just inject in the same old spot.
Yeah.
Every time.
So what do we need to tell people about injections that actually is important? What are those things that I just mentioned? Can they do? What should they not do?
Yeah. Well, let me just jump in with lipo hypertrophy, because that's a buildup of tissue, fatty tissue, if you inject in the same area. And I'm guilty of that. And I used to inject in the same old area. It was easy. And it turns out that if you inject in the area of lipo hypertrophy, it may hurt less, but it just gets bigger and bigger. The insulin doesn't get absorbed normally. It gets absorbed, but not normally.
Yeah.
And it may cause fluctuations, like unexpected fluctuations. What's next?
Well, first, I was just going to add to that, it's just accumulation of fat. So also, it doesn't look good. So aesthetically, people don't like it. So it's another reason just to kind of rotate your sites.
Is that why you did the cool scoping?
Yeah. So, yes, lipohypertrophy is one thing. The actual size of the needle is really important, and that we've learned that you really only need a very small, needle size, that regardless of how big or small you are, the kind of depth of people's skin is almost uniform. So you want to make sure that you're not injecting the muscle. So you're getting, you need to use a small needle, and it actually is important to use a fresh needle every time. And I gotta say, I'm definitely guilty of that, using, the same syringe or the same, pen needle multiple times, because it can be kind of convenient. You're worried about, you don't have a sharps container, so it's just kind of, you reuse it. But as you do that, the needle gets more dull. Every time you inject it, it can be kind of more pro-inflammatory and cause fibrosis, lipohypertrophy. So as much as you can, changing the needle is actually, in all that stuff that I said out in the beginning, probably the most important.
Yeah, they should really show to everyone using needles, either pen tips or syringes, what the needle tip looks like after one injection. Now think about this. If you're sticking it through a rubber stopper, like if you're not using a pen and you're drawing up your insulin, that rubber stopper is going to cause it some damage. So I think it's really important. And people just don't realize that that this can cause issues. Anything that can cause more variability with the response of the insulin we take is important, because we're always trying to reduce those variables.
Yeah. So I would say important things: changing your needle every time, getting a sharps container, and properly disposing of your needles is extremely important. Things that you can probably do away with is actually the alcohol wipes. I don't even have them anymore.
Well, just dip your shirt in here, wipe off your skin, you're good.
So unless you have repeated infections, or you mentioned that, you're a mechanic and you have lots of dirt, on your skin or whatever, there's some nidus for infection, then obviously clean off the area. But doing it before every injection is overkill, and it takes more time and might make you less likely to actually do the injection. So that you can do away with. What about injecting through your clothing?
You know what? Injecting through the clothing is no problem if you use a new needle. It turns out that for some of you that have experienced using injections like that, sometimes a tiny bit of blood comes out where you injected your insulin, and that's not dangerous at all, but it does stain your clothes.
So it's safe from like a infection standpoint, but you just got to make sure the needle's long enough. So it wouldn't be an issue for like Steve's shirt, but my jeans, it might. You're worried that it's not long enough to actually get through the jeans. So that's the only concern, is make sure that you're actually getting it into the skin.
You should buy more Lululemons.
Well, I have just like really thick jeans. So yeah, what's next?
I think that's it.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say is that it's important to prime your insulin, because this is something that I think is a really important topic. So when it comes to injecting insulin, you want to make sure you're getting the right dose. And especially with insulin pens, you need to dial up like 2 units before every single injection. And I actually hold the pen over my hand and inject it to make sure that you're getting liquid coming out, because so often there's air bubbles in there, and then you might be missing a unit or even 2. And if you're taking small doses of insulin, a unit or 2 is a huge difference. So new needle, prime it every time before you inject it is so important.
Yeah, especially if you're on smaller doses.
Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to add, when you talked about the needle length, a lot of folks with type 2 may be on the heavier side, and they think, and even caregivers think, they're not going to get their insulin. But the studies they've done on people of any weight and size, and you might as well use the most comfortable needle for sure.
So MDI, it's a good option for all you, type 1s out there that are on a pump, like whatever. It's something you can also transition back and forth with. That, occasionally I'll go back on injections for different reasons. So you shouldn't feel like you're locked into one thing. And even if you're using a pump all the time, you should carry around syringes and insulin, because things can go wrong, especially when you're traveling, making sure that you have another way of getting insulin, infusion set failure, etc.
You going to mention Wikipedia, please?
Oh my gosh. So this came up earlier on our podcast, that Steve Edelman literally invented this untethered technique, which is a way that, or something that we use for people that might need to disconnect their pump frequently. And what you do is you take 80% of your basal as an injection. So let's say, 18 units or whatever it might be.
Lantus, whatever.
And then the rest of your basal you take through your pump. The 20% is the basal insulin through the pump. So, on a regular day, you're still bolusing through your pump, getting all the advantages of a pump. But if you need to get in the water for 3-4 hours, you can take off your pump and you still have that basal insulin there. It's called the untethered technique, and Steve made this comment that he invented it, and it's on Wikipedia, and I actually just looked it up, and it says the untethered technique as coined by Dr. Steve Edelman.
Untethered regimen.
But yeah.
That's good. I appreciate that.
But I do have a better job of explaining it than you do.
Well, no, I don't think so. But let me just say my last comment is what you made earlier on the podcast, that a lot of folks, especially type 1s who are on multiple daily injections, they pick that regimen for a reason: lifestyle, prior experience, lots of reasons. And there shouldn't be any guilt about not being on a pump. And it turns out that I have patients on MDI that do better than people using the technology, because so much of our control depends on what we're doing to control our diabetes: exercise, timing, testing, responding to the glucose values appropriately. And it's not the technology.
Yeah. So it comes down to choice. But we still always advocate for continuous glucose monitoring. So get on a CGM, but then from there you can do a pump or shots. So I just did 2. You need to catch up.
This is Fireball.
Yeah.
Yeah, you drank, gin.
So, all right. Well, cheers. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you at the next one. Did you sip it? Who sips a shot? Anyways, take care, everybody.